Pregame.com.
South Florida, -2.5 at Pitt, Thursday night college football. Mark, I'm taking the lead on this one. I'm going to tell you, you're a Pittsburgh expert, and I'm going to tell you some of my thoughts, and you can kind of tell me when I'm right and when I'm wrong. To me, I think the key point in this game is that not only is Pitt off of tough losses, they're off of tough games. Playing Iowa, a physical team, Notre Dame, a physical team. Now they're on a short week. Where the flip side is with South Florida is they played Notre Dame, had that huge win, and then they had 3 games in which they were a combined 91-point favorite. So an average of a 30-point favorite in those games. I think that the short week typically is a huge disadvantage for the road team, but considering that they've had 3 straight patsies, the South Florida has been prepping for this. In fact, in the press, it came out with last week, the coaches were spending an hour a night prepping for Pitt, even as they were getting ready for their Saturday game. So I really think this is a tale of 2 teams with a very different scheduling spot.
It is, and one other thing that helps, familiarize themselves with Pitt is South Florida, the coach, Skip Holtz. He was at East Carolina before he was at South Florida. So he faced Tulsa in Conference USA play, which that is where the new coach for Pitt used to be at. So he played him in a championship game once. So he's got, he's familiar with that offense where Pitt is totally different from what they were last year with Dave Wannstedt.
Which brings up another point, which is we're hitting that point in the season where we talk about early, where we say new offense means there's going to be a transition time. There's usually a lot of excitement about a new team, new offense, so they usually underperform. Then at a certain point, people get sick of them and say, oh, they're losing too much, and then that's just when they're starting to gel. Do you think, my gut feeling here is because of the short week, because of the beatings they've taken, this isn't the week, but at some point they're going to start catching on to this offense. When do you think that's going to be?
Well, they showed a lot of signs of it. The Iowa game, they really moved the ball well in the Iowa game. The defense just had a non-typical Pitt collapse. They were horrible in the fourth quarter against the pass. Then last week, they held a powerful Notre Dame offense in check. So it's kind of hard to gauge this team, but mentally.
But again, by the same token, their offense didn't look good at all, you'd say.
Last week, the offense did struggle off of the big game, and I don't know if that was the carryover. It's hard not to be up for Notre Dame, but the way they lost the Iowa game, Pitt was hanging their heads coming off the field in Iowa. It was a really deflated team after that one.
I mean, you got the emotional side, but again, I think you've got a team literally that hasn't had a real game in a month. And they've been pointing to this game. And the question is, and let me ask you, what does that Notre Dame win look like right now?
Well, the Notre Dame win looks good.
By clearly South Florida.
By South Florida. But the situation is with South Florida, they're a good team. Are they as good as the scores that we've been seeing? Because as you alluded to, they're playing nobody. To make it even worse, here's a key stat on South Florida. 13-5 turnover ratio. They're on the plus side, 13-5.
And that's something we talk about again and again early in the season, is that can skew scores and in theory. But let's be honest, if you're playing teams you're averaging as a 30-point favorite, you're going to have more interceptions, more strip sacks and all that stuff. So I'm not surprised by that. When you're 30-point favorite, you're going to get more turnovers. The question is we've got one real game to judge South Florida by, and quite frankly, it was a heck of a game.
It was a heck of a game, but, in that game, the turnovers definitely turned that game because Notre Dame, one of the turnovers was a 14-point play, if you remember. The guy fumbled at the one going in all the way back.
When you're a double-digit favorite and you win, you won.
Not Notre Dame. They were an underdog against Notre Dame.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. As a double-digit underdog, if you win, you're going to get some breaks.
One of the angles that, and I'll decide tomorrow for sure what I'm going to do with this game, but I will say this much, and this is something that, maybe you'll kick over when if you want to go into overtime on this. This is a stand-alone game. It's a Thursday night game. I can tell you this much. If this was on Saturday, my handicap would be totally different, and I would be on South Florida absolutely, because Pitt is in that deflated state, but you've got the Thursday night crowd.
All right, so I'm giving the pick on this. I just got an opinion. This line opened at Pick'em, and now it's up to South Florida -2.5. Yeah, Pick'em. I probably like South Florida a good bit. I'm gonna call for a South Florida win by 3 points. You know, one last point here. The lines makers poll, or the odds makers poll, only has South Florida as the 28th best team. AP has them 16th. So odds makers think South Florida is a little overrated, but I think the whole Pitt thing might be even more extreme. But the whole point here is that we're looking at a Thursday game. So what I'm going to do is call that my official pick. But now we're going to go into overtime. This is the first time we've done this. We're going to give the core information, the pick and everything, as quickly as we can. And then we're going to go into overtime talking about a subject that we'll dig into a little deeper. For those that just want the picks, you can move on to the next video. What we're going to be talking about here, though, is the standalone games. Marco, here's the way I handle them. Is I say that you have investment betting and you have recreational betting. And to me, the recreational betting is no different than if I'm going to throw a little money in a slot machine, which I don't do often, but hey, I'm with friends, maybe have a little fun, couple drinks. Anything with a negative EV, to me, needs to be recreational. And I have a very definite line in my head, and my bet size is literally like 10x. It's not, oh, I'm betting $50 on a recreational game and $100. I think it can literally be 10x. And if so, those, for me, I'm a nickel player for the most part. If I really like a game, I'll play a dime on it. Is I'll throw $50 on a game to watch it and have fun. And $50, hey, it's a steak. You can get the lobster mac and cheese at Del Frisco, the whole thing.
Right.
How do you think about these standalone games? Because clearly one of the biggest faults the average player has is the average bettor is he's betting these standalone games nearly the same amount. But it's crazy because he'll bet 80% of the college football and NFL games standalone, but then he'll bet 15% of the card on a Saturday and Sunday. How is that? It makes no sense.
Me personally, what you have to do is you handicap the game on its own merit. If it's a game that's strong enough to warrant your normal size bet, you do that. But you don't do it just because it's on TV. Now, where the switch up for me is I have a different style of handicapping when you look at these games, because you have to factor in it's a TV game, there's more public money, so when you're looking at the line, you've got to remember that, because Vegas is going to skew the line public perception-wise, and a lot of these Thursday night games, especially when you get a home dog, when they're playing a bigger team.
Okay, but here, you've got a different handicap, which you have a chance to shine with your theories on video podcasts every week. But at the end of the day, you either feel like there's enough value or there's not.
Absolutely.
As a bettor, if there's not, which maybe you're saying because of these added factors, you're going to find true value in a higher percentage of games, I can accept that. But it's still going to be less than 80-85%,
right,
which is what most people do. Most casual square bettors will play a vast majority of these standalone games. Do you just have the discipline to pass them? Do you put a recreational bet down? What do you do?
Me personally, I only bet what I put out to my clients. If I cannot tell my clients to put money on the game, then I'm not doing it even recreationally.
So you just go have ribs or something just for your recreation.
That's my recreation. It's good recreation.
All right, guys, we'll be up next. We're looking at the Friday game, and that is Utah State and BYU.